Good evening. Imagine that you and I are in Yemen tonight. We'd be looking around and we'd see 2 million men, women, and children on the brink of starvation. We'd see cholera. We'd see tribal warfare. We'd see Shia and Sunni killing each other with the help of Saudi Arabia and Iran. We'd look around and probably be tempted to throw up our hands and say, this is the most hopeless place we've ever seen in our lives. But I'd say to you, I know 15 young people in this country who are the hope of this country. They are Shia and Sunni young adults who formed a cooperation circle, and their job in life is to film peace. They go around finding occasions of peace in Yemen, and they film it, and they distribute that film around because they want to give people a glimpse of hope. They want to give their people a picture of the possibilities. 15 in a country of tens of millions. What difference? They're not going to be stopping because of that question. They're part of millions of young adults all over the world who are undaunted by the smallness of their scale and who are undeterred by seemingly insurmountable odds. All they do is duck their heads and do the most important thing for this moment, in this place, at this time. Now, what do I have to do with Yemen? Well, I made a vow in San Francisco in 1993, and that was my fourth vow. I made a vow to be a husband once, to be a priest, to be a bishop, and in February 1993, I made another vow. And it has taken me around the world many times, and it has put me in relationship with Yemen. Now, let me tell you a little bit about myself coming to San Francisco. It's a short story. I was 11 years old, Huntington, West Virginia. I was playing football on a vacant field that was owned by the Episcopal Church. It was a rainy November afternoon, and the priest came out and said, now, boys, you don't want to be out here in the mud. Why don't you come in? I got a ping pong table. Why don't you come in and play ping pong? So all of us traipsed in. A couple of weeks went by, and he said, now, boys, Christmas is coming. How many of you boys would like to wear a uniform and light candles? And I held up my hand, and the next thing I knew, I was the Bishop of California. Short history. When I came here at age 42, I knew a lot about the church, but I didn't know about other things from the hills of West Virginia. Coming to San Francisco, a lot of things came at me, and I had to learn how to adjust and respond. There was the AIDS epidemic. There was the Loma Prieta earthquake. There was the East Bay Hills. There are the gay, lesbian, transgender issues in the church and in this community. I had to learn how to respond, and where I learned the most was from a phone call from then mayor of San Francisco, Dianne Feinstein. The year was 1981. She called up, listen to this. She called up and she said, now, we have a new problem in San Francisco. It's not going to last long. It's homelessness. Politicians. It's homelessness. Could you just house some homeless at Grace Cathedral for a couple of months, and then it'll all go away? And I said, sure. So I got a couple of Episcopal congregations, and the first night we housed 40 people at Grace Cathedral. Second night, 150 people. And then after that, it was wave after wave until it became abundantly clear that no one religious group could respond to this big challenge. And then it dawned on me, I have to get out of being an Episcopalian or a Christian or something. I got to get out of the cathedral and go into the city, and I've got to stop recruiting Episcopalians. If I want to do something about homelessness, I'm going to have to recruit Baptists and Jews and atheists and agnostics and philanthropists and volunteers in the city and county of San Francisco. Big problems require big constituencies of people. And I learned that if you're a bishop, you have an opportunity to mobilize a lot of people for the good of the city if you want to. So I learned a lot of lessons from that phone call. And it put me in position for the biggest challenge of my life, which was coming up. And it came up in a phone call from the United Nations. In 1993, February, they said, would you, at Grace Cathedral, host the 50th anniversary of the United Nations? I said, yes. They said, we have a big idea for this service. We want all the nations of the world together with all the religions of the world. We're going to bring 185 ambassadors of the world for that service, and we want you to bring all the religious leaders of the world to that service. You got to be kidding. The nice thing about an audacious invitation like that is that it causes you to elevate your game and think in bigger terms. I began to think, okay, nations and religions. And there was a thought running around 1993 that said there'll never be peace among nations without peace among religions. And I thought, well, okay, if there's a United Nations, there's probably got to be a United Religions. Somebody ought to do something about that. And I was lying there in bed thinking, well, maybe I ought to do something about that. And the more I thought about it, the more it got to my heart, and I made a vow to God that I would spend the rest of my life being a catalyst for the creation of something to get the religions of the world together somehow, some way. I didn't know how, I didn't know the way, but I was going to do it. My game plan was pretty simple, if audacious. I thought I'd go around the world and I'd speak with the religious leaders of the world. So I took 5 months. And I did it. I talked to Pope John Paul II. I spoke with the Sheikh of Al-Azhar. I went to Dharamsala and talked to the Dalai Lama. I talked to Chief Rabbi. I went to Calcutta and talked to Mother Teresa. And I asked them, I went from every place from Japan to Jerusalem. And I asked them all one question. And the question was, are you ready to deputize somebody from your tradition to meet with deputies from other traditions to pursue peace among religions and work together to serve the world? And they all had the same answer. And the answer was, absolutely not. Why did they say that? My guess is because if you're a religious leader, your first obligation is to sit on top of this group of people that you're serving, and your job is to defend the faith of those people against rival claims and against rival religions. If you think that your religion has the most authentic word from God, how can you be equal to other people at a table? I learned from religious leaders that there's not going to be a united religions. So I came back to San Francisco in 1996, complete failure. Pretty embarrassing too. But then I began to think, well, first of all, I wanted to quit. And I thought about quitting. But then I thought about my vow to God, that I'd be a catalyst for the creation of bringing these religions together. How do you do that? And then it dawned on me, I had done nothing wrong. I was absolutely right about the vision. I was just looking for love in all the wrong places. Forget about the religious leaders. Go back to what I learned in San Francisco. Go to the grassroots. Just go out in the community. Go to all the grassroots people of religions. And while you're at it, go to everybody else. Go to the indigenous people. Some of their spirituality is older than religious. Go to the people who say, I'm spiritual but not religious. If you're going to open the door, just open the door all the way. Big problems in the world demand big constituencies. So I got serious about it again. I went to the bank and got a personal line of credit for $1 million. If you ever wonder why banks get in trouble? I got a staff. We spent 4 years building a global community, trying to find the right words for a charter. Do you know how hard it is to write one sentence that every religion in the world would agree on? Took 4 years. And to come up with an organizational design where the greatest amount of authority is in the smallest unit. It's more of an organism than an organization. We spent 4 years and we did it. And we signed the charter in the year 2000, and within a few years, we were the largest international interfaith organization in the world. Woo! Our name is United Religions Initiative, URI, or Upper Respiratory Infection. And the genius of what we do is that we work with little cooperations, and sometimes big ones, that self-organize around any issue they want. Some of them are in the frozen tundra of Siberia. Some of them are in the baked sands of Jordan. We're in 108 countries of the world. And these cooperation circles have about 850,000 people in them. I've already told you about one cooperation circle in Yemen. Let me tell you 2 more, and that's it. Let's come back to the Bay Area. Across San Francisco Bay is Contra Costa County. After 9/11, the hate crimes against Muslims was on the increase in Contra Costa County. And in 2007, folks burned down a mosque in Antioch. In 2015, so many Muslim children were harassed in that county that the cooperation circle there, the Contra Costa County group, got 200 religious groups, Baha'is, Sikhs, Hindu, Jewish, everybody together. And they made a big circle of affection, of solidarity around the San Ramon Muslim interfaith or chapel, or whatever it's called. When you get to be 82, you forget a lot of things. But the point that they wanted to make to the community is that an attack against one religion is an attack against all religions. So we're sticking together. But now, let's even get closer to home. Let's go to San Francisco. Do you realize that there are 800 religious congregations in San Francisco? I mean, this is the most secular place I could think of. That statistic blows my mind. And not only that, but they get along. They're part of the San Francisco Interfaith Council. If you've got a problem on emergency, preparedness, or civil rights, or affordable housing, you go there because they handle the issues. It's a remarkable group. And what do they do tonight in San Francisco? They house the homeless in winter shelters. And what do they do after they house the homeless tonight at 12 o'clock? They walk the streets from midnight till sunup, being available to lonely and lost people who just want to have a conversation and a little human compassion. And should one of those homeless people die tonight, their name is going to be kept sacred and brought to a memorial service, and that name will be read out loud before God and before these people, because what we're about is preserving the integrity, the human dignity of everybody, and trying to serve the community as well. That's what all the cooperation circles do. So, you and I, if we went to Yemen tonight and we had one wish, just one wish, I know what it would be. We would wish that there'd be a ceasefire and the killing stop, and we would wish that the humanitarian aid would get in there quickly and start saving those lives. But if somebody said, how about a second wish? I'd say, I got a second wish. I want Yemen to work toward being unified. You can talk about divisions and divisions all you want, but there comes a time that somebody's got to build unity in the community. Somebody's got to plant the little seeds of peace in the ground if you're going to have a harvest of peace upstairs. There's no other way. You can't have a harvest unless you got little seeds. Religious, grassroots religious seed planting by Sunni and Shia working together in Yemen is the only hope for that country. And I know 15 people who are doing it even today. And they join with the millions and millions of other people all over the world, mostly young people, who are undaunted by the size of their scale and undeterred by overwhelming odds. They just duck their heads and do the one most important thing needed at this time and this place. They're out there by the millions, I tell you. Take heart. Imagine Yemen. Thank you.
קורה בהפסקות האוכל אצלנו בבית ספר? כן.
מאיר השמן מביא לילדים שאין להם אוכל.
בכל יום מאיר השמן תורם לנו סנדוויצ'ים. ילדים שבעצם נזקקים. ושאלתי אותם אם הם יודעים מאיפה הכריך הגיע. ומי נותן אותו, הם לא ידעו.
רציתי לדעת מי מביא את הסנדוויצ'ים לכיתה.
ואחרי שאילי שאלה אותנו מי מביא את האוכל, מה החלטנו פה בבית ספר לעשות?
להזמין את מאיר השמן.
החלטנו להזמין את מאיר השמן, מצוין.
אז הביאו אותו לבית ספר שלנו ושאלנו אותו כמה שאלות.
ומי רוצה לספר קצת על המפגש עם מאיר השמן?
היינו בספרייה והקצבנו מה הוא עושה. הוא דיבר איתנו על אוכל. הוא דיבר איתנו שיש לו מסעדה. כשהיה לו התקף לב, אז הוא הקים מסעדה. שילדים שאין להם אוכל, אז הם באים למסעדה הזאת ומבקשים כריך. אנחנו רוצים להחזיר לו טובה. אנחנו רוצים לעזור. רצינו לעזור לו. הוא השיב לנו טובה, עכשיו אנחנו נשיב לו טובה.
רצינו להיות משמעותיים, שהילדים עצמם ירגישו משמעותיים ויעשו מעשה.
אולי נתרום לו כסף, ואז הוא יביא לילדים שאין להם כסף לקנות טיפה אוכל. נעבוד איתו במסעדה כשנהיים איתו. מתי שאנחנו נגדל אנחנו יכולים לעזור כמו שילדים שגדולים. זה לא גם של ביצים. בגלל שאנחנו יכולים לתת לו טובה בירקות שאנחנו נגדל לו את הירקות. שאנחנו בחווה חקלאית נותנים לו את הירקות ועושה לנו סנדוויץ'. איך בדיוק עזרנו? הלכנו לחווה החקלאית ושתלנו זרעים, כל מיני זרעים.
אז בדקתי שיתוף פעולה עם החווה. מנהל החווה מאוד התלהב מהיוזמה שלנו, והקצה לנו מקום שמיועד רק לנו. שלח לנו הסעה גם בהתנדבות.
כמובן שהסכמתי לשתף את הפעולה, ואמרתי בואו כבר נעשה מזה תהליך יותר משמעותי, ניתן לכם חלקת אדמה, ואתם תזרעו ותשתלו, הילדים יבואו לאבד את זה לאורך כל השנה.
אנחנו מתחילת שנה בעצם יוצאים אחת לשבוע כל יום שלישי, שעתיים שבועיות לחווה, אנחנו שותלים כל מיני ירקות. יש שם מדריך שמלווה אותם ומסביר להם על התהליכים. ילדים צופים מפעם לפעם בגדילה ובצמיחה, רואים את כל התהליך עצמו.
הילדים הקטנים מעבדים את האדמה, ניגשו את העשבים, שתלו את השתילים, מטפחים לאורך כל תקופת גידול את השתילים.
והם עצמם בעבודת הכפיים שלהם מגדלים, הם מתאמצים, מאוד נהנים שם.
הילדים האלה עכשיו יודעים שמצוידים ביכולת לחולל שינויים.
תפוח אדמה. זה גזר. חווה חקלאית. כשנהיה גדולים אנחנו יכולים גם לעבוד פה.
בטח, איזו שאלה.
אם אני נותנת, אז אני מקבלת בחזרה. עושים למישהו שמחה, אז גם עושים לי שמחה. הלב שלי מוביל בדרך הנכונה. כל אחד יכול, גם ילד, גם מבוגר. זה לא, הדבר הזה של אני יכול, זה לא נמדד לפי גילאים, לפי גובה, לפי צבע שיער. זה נמדד לפי הרצון שלו לעשות את הדבר הזה. כל ילד יכול לעשות כל מה שהוא רוצה, שלא צריך לפחד לנסות לעשות דברים. מאיר, למה קוראים לך מאיר השמן?
אני שמן, לא רואים?
The reality is that I know war very, very well. I have witnessed time and time again the way that it can destroy a person's soul, the way that an individual ends up utterly shredded by the lack of comprehension when it comes to how to process their emotions, how to cope with the physical destruction of everything that they knew to be real. and how it claws at their mental psyche at every single step of the way. And in most cases, it even steals away any shred of dignity that may remain. I just got back from Raqqa, city in Syria that had just been liberated by the Syrian Democratic Forces. That is the force that is being backed by the US-led coalition. And it was liberated from ISIS. And despite all of the different war zones that I've been to, there was something that was especially jarring about Raqqa. Every other place that I've been to, amid the destruction and the devastation, you would always find little bits of color, whether it was a child's shoe or a toy or a scrap of a notebook. There would be a hint of the lives that used to exist there, of the happiness that once existed within these walls. And in Raqqa, there was nothing. It was gray. And it was impossible to imagine how anyone could have quite possibly survived. And then I met a family who did at one of the refugee camps. And Najah, she was the mother, and she had 7 children. And she was telling us about how she had to send out her 9-year-old daughter while they were under siege to go and get supplies for them. Her 9-year-old daughter would go out and siphon with a hose fuel from wrecked out cars so that she could bake bread for the rest of them. And they hid underground in the darkness in the final days of the battle for Raqqa. Because they had tried to flee time and time again, they would try to run away. And at every single occasion, they described how ISIS would shoot at them and they would be forced back, or even stop them and hold a gun to their heads. In fact, the little 5-year-old could easily mimic the way that ISIS would say, "Stay back, we're going to shoot you." And so the 9-year-old went out. And one day, the 9-year-old managed to find a little piece of meat. She begged it off of an ISIS fighter. And it was so small, it would fit in the palm of your hand. And this was to feed a family of 9. And the other children were so excited. You would think that they had just seen the most marvelous gift they could possibly imagine. That's how deprived they were in those moments, in those final moments. And the reason why Najah had to send out her 9-year-old was because she couldn't send out her 17-year-old son. ISIS was deliberately conscripting men. She couldn't send out her 15-year-old daughter because ISIS was trying to get as many brides as possible. And they had, in fact, already come after her daughter. But she had somehow found the courage to grab a knife from the kitchen and chase this fighter out of her house. But the 15-year-old had to stay hidden. And so she sent out her 9-year-old. Now, of course, her entire family were incredibly relieved to have survived. But now they were living in a refugee camp. And they literally had nothing. Najah actually coincidentally messaged me a few days ago. And she said, Arwa, it's been about a week since you've been here. People have been seeing the reporting about Raqqa. We know that there's been a lot of journalists. What's going on? Is anyone going to help us? What do we do? Doesn't the world care about what's happening? I could not respond to those questions because if I were to try to say something reassuring, that would probably be a lie. And I could not tell her the truth, that most people turn away when they see stories from Syria, that there is an apathy when it comes to a lot of the war zones that are currently out there. And that politicians and global leaders and the people that could actually impact her life probably don't really understand it and maybe even don't care. So I had to say nothing. And that's not the first time we, as journalists, receive these kinds of questions from these kinds of individuals that have already been through more than we can ever possibly imagine. And so most mornings, most days, in fact, I do think that maybe the world is better off if our planet was just hit by an asteroid. Because for us as journalists, we really do feel, especially today, that a lot of this reporting that we're doing, especially when it comes to the human stories, to the people that are suffering because of decisions over which they have no control, all of that is happening in a dark void, in a dark abyss. But then I remember the story of a little boy who taught me one of the most valuable lessons I have ever learned throughout my career. This little boy's name was Yusuf. It was Iraq. It was 2007. And back then, Iraq, too, was no longer really in the headlines. It was no longer really in the spotlight. People were turning away when they heard stories about Iraq. Yusuf came to our office, our CNN Baghdad bureau, and he had been burnt. Unknown masked men had doused him in gasoline and set him on fire. He was just 5 years old. By the time he got into our office, his face had hardened into this mask of scar tissue. He couldn't open his mouth, and he sat in our Baghdad bureau eating rice, but he had to take one grain at a time and just shove it between his lips. He was so angry, but he didn't know how to process these emotions. He was just 5 years old, and so all you could do to really understand how tormented this child was look in his eyes. And he was lashing out at his sister, and his parents didn't know what to do. And all we could do for them at that point was say, look, we can try to tell your story, but we don't know what's going to happen. We told Yusuf's story, and the response was amazing. I mean, it came from all over the world. People wanted to help. It transcended ethnicity, nationality, religion, all sorts of boundaries. People came together to help this little boy, and an organization in Los Angeles ended up agreeing to take on the case. CNN viewers donated hundreds of thousands of dollars to help this family out. My best moment of my career was the moment when I could pick up the phone and tell his parents, your little boy is going to get help. And I traveled with them to Los Angeles, and I remember seeing Yusuf at the beach, and he was seeing the ocean for the first time. And he ran towards it screaming and laughing, and I looked over at his parents, and they were crying because it was the first time they'd heard their son laugh in a year. What that story taught me was that the kindness and compassion of strangers exists, and we may not always see it every day. But just the power of caring and then of doing something about it, even if it's a small donation to one little boy, has such a massive, profound impact. Yusuf today not only wants to be a doctor to help others the way that he has been helped, he doesn't remember the attack anymore. 10 years on, this 15-year-old boy's life, his first memories of life, are not defined by violence. They are defined by the kindness and compassion that he saw afterwards. And it doesn't need to be large change that can impact a person's life. How we react to one another in sometimes the worst of situations can have a lasting impact on our psyche. For myself personally, about a year ago to date, I was in Mosul. I was embedded with the Iraqi counterterrorism force with my cameraman, and we were going in as they were part of their first push to try to retake Mosul from ISIS. And our unit, our convoy, ended up being ambushed, and a suicide car bomb came in and took out the back vehicle of the convoy. The first vehicle went up in this massive ball of flames, and we were trapped. And we ended up seeking shelter in the middle of all of this madness in civilian homes. And we were in one house, and the front line was pretty much the wall of the house. The women and children were hiding in the back corner. The courtyard of the house was filled with wounded soldiers and streaked with blood. And in the middle of all of this, the homeowner makes fried eggs for us and for the soldiers, because despite it all, we were their guests. And that was the only way that they could also hold on to their humanity and their dignity. But for me, that whole nightmare of an ordeal that I was fortunate enough to have only last for 24 hours was not defined by the fear that I experienced. It was defined by the kindness that I saw. We know that we cannot stop the wars, but we can help to mitigate the consequences of it on an individual, if not directly alter them. Small actions in ways that we react to one another, especially people that have suffered violence and trauma, has a profound impact, whether it's a small moment that just lasts for a day or even less, or whether it's one that can impact them over and over again over the course of a lifetime. I remember about 2 years ago, during the big flood of refugees to Europe, I was in Hungary covering the refugee crisis. And there was that one day when the refugees who had been waiting at the Budapest train station decided, that's it, we're going to walk. These are individuals who had not only seen the worst of the suffering in their own countries, the worst of the violence possibly imaginable, had just crossed the Mediterranean, risking their lives, risking their children's lives, and then quite literally carried their children for weeks and suffered every single humiliation you could possibly imagine along every step of the route. And as they walked, and we were broadcasting live, as were other networks, about 2 hours into this walk, all of a sudden people began showing up with strollers. The refugees that were around us in that moment were so overwhelmed at that little small gesture that they said that they would never forget it, and I believe them when they say that. I believe that that is going to be one of the key points of a story that they then tell their children. What I now know is that governments will continue to fail. They will fail, but we do not need to fail each other. There are things that we can do on a small scale every single day. We choose how we react to one another. We cannot turn away from a news story because it might be disturbing. We can actually go out and learn more about the root causes of what is happening and understand a bit more about what actually needs to be done to prevent it. We can educate our children about what's happening in the world around them, teach them not to be afraid of someone because they may perceive them or misperceive them as being different. We can teach our children, we can teach ourselves and oblige ourselves to go out and speak to somebody who might be the new child or the new family in town. There are little things we can do every single day that have an immense and enormous power. Thank you.
وشلون يطول من حرب وشلون يطول من حرقة فراقه صبحي مدلول جمالي والي جمالي والي متعذبة دنياي جمالي والي جمالي والي جمالي والي يم العيون السود ما جوزن أنا خدتش الجيم ولا نتريق بنا خدتش الجيم ولا نتريق بنا كنت وانت صغير حب عرفنا بنظرات العيون قالوا ترى دول يحبون نزور لما نكبروا صغيرة كنت وانت صغير حب عرفنا بنظرات العيون قالوا ترى دول يحبون عالجرف قعدنا ليالي ذاك النهر وإنا طالعين تغيرنا وكبرنا يا غالي ظل النهر وإنا طالعين عالجرف قعدنا ليالي ذاك النهر وإنا طالعين تغيرنا وكبرنا يا غالي ظل النهر وإنا طالعين مثل النجمة والقمر كبر حبنا والسهر لعيونك حبيبي تبتدي دروب السفر مثل النجمة والقمر كبر حبنا والسهر تبتدي دروب السفر لا 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 يا لا 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 مثل النهر ما تغيرنا حبنا كبر واحنا كبرنا أحلى الحب اللي جمعنا مثل الطيور احنا صرنا حبنا كبر واحنا كبرنا أحلى الحب اللي جمعنا مثل الطيور احنا صرنا مثل النجمة والقمر كبر حبنا والسهر لعيونك حبيبي تبتدي دروب السفر مثل النجمة والقمر كبر حبنا والسهر لعيونك حبيبي تبتدي دروب السفر لا 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 شكرا جزيلا لكم. شكرا جزيلا. شكرا جزيلا لكم ودعيتي لكم. مر بأهلنا قولهم وطننا، مر بأهلنا قولهم وطننا، ما عدا غالي لالي 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 لالي. مع السلامة.
The world is aflame with violence in the name of religion. The guns capture our attention. They speak the loudest. It's easy to forget there are people playing a different tune, one that promotes harmony and cooperation. Janessa Wilder is an extraordinary pioneer in the global interfaith movement. This growing movement is creating pathways for religions to work together.
It's tremendous that something that is used so often to divide people, religion, is now being used as a tool for unity and to promote peace.
In 2006, Janessa founded the Euphrates Institute. Its goal, to find ways to bring religions in the Middle East together.
Every meeting we have at a local level, there are Muslims there are Jews there are Christians there, and you're not, in a lot of these occasions talking specifically about religion, you're just interacting as if you're all there with a seat at the table and you're all focused on solving the same problem.
If you think that she might be naive about the challenges she faces, just listen to Janessa's story. After graduate school at Stanford University, she was recruited by the Central Intelligence Agency. Soon after 9/11, she was sent to Afghanistan. Next, she volunteered for Iraq.
For the first year that I was there, I was an insurgency analyst. I was in charge of Al-Anbar province, which is, the Sunni triangle of death that we've heard so much about.
Her work took her inside the notorious Abu Ghraib prison and war-torn Fallujah. It was dangerous and often frustrating.
You're thinking, okay, we got another bad guy, but they just kept coming. I felt like I was trying to catch drops of water from a leaky faucet.
Then, one day in Iraq, her life took another dramatic turn.
I was down a few miles away from Fallujah, sitting along the Euphrates River, and I was so struck by the picture of calm and peace. I realized that the life force of the river was more powerful than the war going on, and at that moment I decided to make a change.
Janessa left the CIA and joined the interfaith movement.
I see lives transformed every day. I see people's lives changed. I see progress. I see tangible results every day.
On this day, Janessa, along with her young family, visited an interfaith organization headquartered in San Francisco. The United Religions Initiative, or URI, is the largest grassroots interfaith network in the world. URI supports the work of people like Janessa and hundreds of thousands of others who are joining hands in religious harmony.
I think URI has the answer. I think it has a model to build peace. It's really what the world is yearning for right now.
17 young people from Amman recently drove to Mafraq to distribute bags of donated clothing and shoes, along with blankets and mattresses they collected themselves for needy Syrian families who have fled to Jordan. Their first stop was the apartment of this woman who arrived in Jordan last month after fleeing her home in the Chaldea neighborhood in Homs. The way these volunteers see it, Syria and Jordan share more than just a border.
Syria and Jordan, we are also families. We are married from each other. We are going come back to each other. We know each other. Syria is our people, and Jordan is their country.
Their visit to the individual homes was coordinated in part by the Islamic Charity Society Center in Mafraq, which keeps a detailed list of the needs of the 850 Syrian families that have registered with the organization. On this particular day, 50 Syrian families are invited to come to the center to collect large bags of donated food and to meet with their donors. Most of the families do not want to talk on camera, but donors like Faisal Nashawati are anxious to talk about the difference that just one person can make.
Any person, he had friends, all friends, they have friends, because that, someone who can make some Syrian people happy.
Sheikh Saleh Al Tawan, who purchased all of the new mattresses, says he drove to Mafraq from Qasab, Saudi Arabia. What he saw inspired him. Actually, when we came to Jordan to this center, the Islamic Mafraq Center, he explains, we found that people were already providing financial and moral support, working night and day to serve these refugees, and we witnessed this ourselves. Many of the families that are registered with this charity will have the opportunity to pick up food bags containing essential items, rice, cooking oil, sweets, among others. But despite the outpouring of generosity from donors right here in Jordan and from other countries, organizers say the need is still great. Currently, the need of the people is in the direction of housing, says Khalid Ghanan, because these houses are rental houses, and the average rent is $140. And this amount is a heavy burden on families, especially because they don't have a source of income in Jordan. Ghanan says there is also a desperate need for milk and diapers for the more than 400 Syrian children ages 3 and under whose parents are now in Mafraq. He adds that less than half of those registered with the Islamic charity have registered with the UNHCR, making gestures like this one all the more important. Thank God. May God give to them as they've given to us, says this woman who says she's from the Hamadiyya neighborhood in Homs. Reporting from Mafraq, Jordan, I'm Amy Hybels.
مرحبا. قطعت 40 ميلا إلى غاية هذه المنطقة الهادئة في الجنوب الغربي لمدينة ناشفيل في ولاية تينيسي فقط كي ألتقي ناشطة في المجال الطبيعي، مجال البيئة ومجالات أخرى متعلقة بالتعايش والتسامح بين مختلف الديانات والثقافات والأعراق هنا في الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية. إنها دينا كابيتاني التي اختارت أن تسكن في هذا المكان، وقد وعدتني بالمناسبة أن تستقبلني بموسيقى من نوع الكاونتري. نتابع. Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
You said that you welcome me with some music.
Yes, we're over the rainbow here in a beautiful retreat center along the river. Somewhere over the rainbow, way up high, there's a land that I heard of way up high. There's a...
Dina, thank you to be one of our best guests to ask about what you believe, what you fight for, and all you about your cause, which is the compassion. So could you please tell me the thing that you want to say on this?
Well, I believe in love and compassion, and the movement of compassion that people are just people and human beings, and when we connect to our hearts, we pretty much want the same things in life, and we pretty much can get along and see things that are in common with each other and see how we're the same. And the movement of compassion is all about connecting to people's hearts and connecting to the humanity of each person, and putting the things that make us different, like our belief systems and our ideas, kind of secondary to our humanity and the things that we have in common.
All the religions share the same concept. So you mean by this movement to get all people within the same cause?
Well, like you said, most religions, the central theme of most religions is compassion. It's the golden rule, so they're treating others as you would like to be treated. It's in most religions, that golden rule. And so compassion is something about feeling with others, feeling your own pain and being able to feel with another's pain and wanting to relieve that. That's what compassion means, feeling with. And so rather than being related to any religion, it's more about just feeling your humanity and connecting to somebody else's humanity.
So let's say now anyone who starts a cause, it's because there is something. So you started this, or you are a part of this because you saw that there is no compassion in this world?
No, it's something that I got on board with. It's part of a global movement based on the Charter for Compassion. Karen Armstrong was a religious scholar. She's a religious scholar, and she did a TED Talk, the idea is worth spreading, and she did a talk on compassion being the central theme of all faiths. And her TED Talk was very successful, and she won $100,000 and her wish for the world, and she asked that people from all different parts of the world would draft this charter for compassion. People of different faiths drafted it together. And then out of that came a movement where different people would affirm the charter, say they believed in it, and then cities would affirm the charter. And kind of became a movement where communities and cities would say, well, we're a compassionate city and we're going to prove that, and we're going to create compassionate initiatives. So several artists were actually, I was involved in playing music for an event that was about compassion, and that's when it was announced that Nashville was going to be a compassionate city.
To label or to qualify a city as a compassionate city, what should this city do? What are the criteria? What are the standards?
Well, one of the things is to affirm the Charter for Compassion International, Charter for Compassion International. The city and the mayor and the city council have to go and create a declaration or a proclamation, a resolution saying that they're a compassionate city. So each city movement comes up with what they think their campaign is about. Because Nashville is a city of many creative people, it's music city capital of the world.
Why you are here, and what makes you like choosing this place especially?
Well, I love being in nature, and I feel so much more peaceful and connected to myself and the earth when I'm in nature. I feel connected to spirit and connected to my heart.
What's the position, what's the weight, what's the importance of earth and the concept, the other causes of fighting for, against polluters and people who don't like the earth within this movement, the movement of the compassionate?
Well, the earth, we are made of the earth. We are about 78% water. We are the food that we eat. If you don't eat, you don't live. The food is the earth that we eat. So our bodies are essentially a piece of earth walking around. So it's interesting today that we've gotten so far away from that awareness that we get on our screens and in our boxes, and we forget that we are the earth. If we don't have clean water, if we don't have good food, we aren't going to live. So the food, the water, the air is our life. It's what the trees exhale, we inhale. What we inhale, you know, they exhale. And
so this is why you defend it. So this is why.
Because it's me. Because the earth is what my body, what my vehicle is made of.
حدثتني عن صديقها وهو مسعود، وسوف نلتقي مسعود. Let's meet مسعود.
Okay.
It's a bamboo. It's part of a woodwind instruments. As far as where I learned to play it, who knows? It's the wind talking, and I come from a land of spirits.
What land?
So it's a land of Rumi, a land of Hafiz, land of folks who brought tradition of culture of creative expression with their words, with their song, with their dance. When you're talking about hatred and xenophobia and culture of harm and protection, and then you're talking about also altruism, reciprocity, compassion. Between these words and these values are all of us human beings at different degrees and different stages of development. We are here in order to shine light to each other, inspire each other.
This is my Earthman vest. You could see on the back. It says Earthman.
What you want to say by that?
I am an environmental performing artist and activist, an educator. I 25 years ago, starting strategically using music and the arts as a tool in the environmental movement in order to teach, certainly children, but right on up through adults, that each one of us has the power to make a difference. And when we understand, we educate ourselves and we activate ourselves, we can inspire incredible changes on our planet. But I know in our lifetime and our children's lifetime, we're never going to be living on any other planet. And right now, our planet that has given us life is struggling to keep up with human beings and the way that we are relating in the resources and the life-givingness of this planet Earth, this third planet from the sun. It's a planet we call Earth, but more importantly, it is a planet that we call home. Too many people in this ecosystem are making the night's bad news. So lock all the car doors, pull down those shades. We're gonna have to change our ways.
Shalom, shalom, shalom to all yom. Shalom, shalom, shalom to all yom. Alektik. Salam alaikum,
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Preclude, prejudge, preconceive. Now, what do all these synonyms of prejudice have in common? They all have the same beginning of P-R-E, which literally translates to beforehand. Now, I want everyone sitting here to look to the person sitting next to them. I want you to notice how that person is different than you in every way possible, and how you probably at some point had given them a label or a title of some sort without ever knowing it. Let me show you an example of prejudice. Did you know, according to the Council of American Islamic Relations, 46% of Americans say that they believe that Islam is more likely than any other religion in the world to encourage violence. Yet 60% of them say they have very little knowledge or no knowledge whatsoever about what Islam actually is. I want to take you back to a time when I was younger. I had this basic model mindset that made me think that everyone's created equally, that it didn't matter what race, what gender, or what religion you had. For me, it was silly the things that people were doing based on what made the other person different. It was the way that everyone had thought when they were younger, until the world had put these unfair judgments and stereotypes into our minds and changed the way we saw the people around us. I want to tell you a story about when I was younger, back when I lived in Oklahoma. It was around the transition between elementary school and middle school. Now, this was a scary time for me because it was different people coming from different schools that I wasn't used to. I remember the specific day in the second month of school in which I had stepped into social studies, just like I had every morning. It had been September 11th of 2014, and I guess they had this thing in which the district would like the teachers to educate us on the matter of 9/11. Now, as much as this might surprise you, I knew very little about the topic beforehand, except for it was something that had really affected the country. The teacher started out by showing us a short video that was intended to give a brief explanation about what had happened that day. A slight confusion had arisen inside of me because they made such a big deal about the fact that the terrorists were Muslim. Now, I hadn't been confused for a minute longer because before I knew it, the boy behind me, he turned around and he said to me, "I'm so glad there aren't any Muslims in our school." Now, being the only Muslim in my school, I was kind of surprised. I mean, I had this appalled look on my face. I've never heard anyone say that ever in my entire life. I said to him, "Well, what's the problem with Muslims?" Now, he looked so surprised, as if he could not believe that I had just said that, as if those words did not just come out of my mouth. He said, "Didn't you just watch the video? They're all terrorists." I was speechless. I returned listening to the lesson, and I didn't know it at the time, but in mere seconds, that basic model mindset that I had started unraveling before me, and it started changing the way I thought not only about others, but myself. I often refrained from talking about my religion at school, and I didn't really tell anyone about my religion except for the exception of my close friends because they would never make quick judgments about me. I quickly grew to know that a lot of the people at my school were actually really strongly opinionated about the topic of my religion, just like that boy. Flash forward to 7th grade, I had moved to Azar. My parents had decided that we should go from Oklahoma to Saudi Arabia. They put me into an American school because they wanted us to feel more comfortable with moving overseas. Apart from it being a different school, I was really, really nervous because it was an entirely different community in an entirely different place. But I grew to know that the students at Azar were a lot different from those back in Oklahoma. I mean, first off, there were people coming from all over the place. I mean, in just one classroom, there could be 2 students from all over the world. And in Oklahoma, everyone was just from Oklahoma. First thing I remember realizing was the cultural diversity, as I had mentioned before. And the second thing I remember realizing was the emphasis they had on cultural understanding. They wanted us really to get to know the people around us and see that they're more than just their appearance. One example of this is something that we used to do called Eagle Advisory. Now, this is something the middle school attends daily, and throughout the year we do some activities that are supposed to help us build our global citizenship. One activity I remember doing earlier in the year was called walking a mile in someone's shoes. Now, this was a really particularly interesting activity for me because we would be role-playing certain people based on their given experiences and cultural background, and we would be trying to play a situation. And this would teach us how we would how we would sometimes perceive people to be something they're not. It kind of made me wanted to go out in the world and teach this cultural understanding that I had gained, especially to that boy in my class. I want you to go back to the moment in which I had asked you to look to the person sitting next to you, and about that label you could have given them, and how, if they were to hear it out loud, could probably change how they see themselves, and kickstart their mindset to start unraveling, and change how they perceive the world forever. Thank you.
I'm gonna try to do his homework. Can you do
And it's Paris. How old are you? You are 7? 7 years. And you say in Arabic it's Saba? How do you say Arabic? Saba? Oh, you're 7. Okay. And you're Ali? Ali, okay. And who is this one? Zid. Zid. And this is Jiraiya. And what's your name again? Muhammad. Okay. And what's your name? Abir, very good.
Muhammad.
Muhammad, very good. Ahmed.
Or no, Muhammad Zaid.
Oh, Muhammad Zaid. Okay. And that's Noor.
Noor Muhammad.
Okay, Noor. It's yours. Oh, yes. Oh, very good. Very good. And where's your mama? Where's your mama? And what's that baby name? Oh, that's your baby. Ah, very good. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
عايز له القهوة عايز له القهوة
علاء خذ رايك والله
هلا
على خلوة يلا مهند
Yeah, in my brother, son brother.
أنا أبو العيلة
بقول لك كل يوم نسافر
نور it's mean light very good
A mark of Palestinian hospitality is offering hot Turkish coffee. It has a hint of ginger.
صراحة عنده معقول هاي معقول هاي this one أكلك oh no she said Josh and Dana are eating and into everything
What's your name?
מה זה אומר הדבר הזה? זה אומר שבני אדם, יש להם את האג'נדה שלהם. למדינות יש אג'נדה אחד, ולדתות יש את האג'נדה שלהם, שאנחנו מכירים היטב, ולבני אדם יש אג'נדה אחרת. יש להם אג'נדה של חיים, של תקשורת, של רצון, לפתוח את הדלת, לראות מה יש בצד השני, להתחבר. שלום, רובינים. שלום, מי רוצה קופי? אני כבר יודעת איזה כוס כל אחד שותה. הנה הכוס של אחינועם. כן, זה הכוס שלי. אני כבר יודעת להכין לה גם את הכוס. יש משהו טעים.
האמת שיש לנו איזושהי מסורת מצחיקה כזאת שמדי כמה שנים פתאום אני נזכר שהביטלס היו אחלה להקה. למעשה כתבו כמה שירים לא רעים. רצינו דואט על We Can Work It Out.
זה באמירה, מדברת אנגלית מדהים. היא פשוט מדברת בכלל מדהים כל שפה שהיא מדברת. אנחנו שרות כל כך, האמת רוב האנשים רוסית. איך זה הולך הוואן טו טרי הזה? רס דבת טרי דבת Why you see it your way? Run the risk of knowing that our love may soon be gone. We gotta work it out. We gotta work it out.
נכון.
גדול. בוקר. אף אחד לא מכוון על הבוקר. אוקיי, אבל רק שנייה, איפה החלוקה שלנו? איפה העברית? הנה. There must be another way. לא, נתחיל רק נכון. There must be another way. אני ממציאה? לא, זה יפה.
לפני זה.
כל מה שליבי מבקש אוהבת את הפזמון שלו. And when I cry for both of us. כשאני בוכה, אני בוכה בשביל שתינו, בשביל כולנו. My pain has no name, לכאב שלי אין שם, אין לו זהות. אתה צריך לכתוב לי כאן את המילים. כל הלכו. זה כל לחוף. שנייה. כל לחוף איזול. אני לצערי הרב, המשפחה שלי, למרות שהם דוברי ערבית כולם, בגלל מתימן עוד, הם לא ראו לנכון ללמד אותנו תימנית. יש לי עניין איתם על זה עכשיו. אבל בוא נגיד ככה, את הצליל יש לי כמובן, מהמוזיקה התימנית. אבל זה מירה כתבה את המילים האלה וגם עזרה לי, אני מקווה שאני הוגה אותה בצורה סבירה.
היא הוגה מצוין. התלמידה הכי טובה שאי פעם הייתה לי.
דרך ארוכה נעבור, דרך כה קשה, יחד אליו, ונגיד איתול, כל לחוף איזול, and when I cry to the merciless sky and say, there must be another way, there must be another way.
יפה בנות.
All right.
Shalom, everybody. It's a pleasure being here. In this song, we ask you please to sing in the chorus with us together, okay? Here, my friends, I stand before you naked, stripped of all pretense. I'm here to say a word or two in the name of love and innocence. It's been a long time, they've been out of style, and I won't live in illusion. There's not much chance that things will change on lonely planet Earth. All that is natural, all that is free, like me loving you and you loving me, like a sweet fruit growing on a tree, like the blood red coral in the sea, like shaking hands and sharing food, and a real clean attitude, and a big strong heart, well that is good, and the miracle of the good. Shalom, 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 Pache. Shalom, 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 shalom. Shalom, shalom, shalom. You really don't need a diploma from any university to understand and to enjoy this plentiful diversity. You only need to free your mind of all those preconceptions and use your mouth for laughing and for asking and to kiss. Communicate, communicate. Don't say, oh Lord, I've come too late. You're always welcome at love's gate to wash your feet of fear and hate. So when you come and when you go, the words are peace, goodbye, hello. In a language that I know, it goes like this. Shalom, shalom. Shalom, 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 shalom. Shalom, 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 shalom. Shalom, 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 shalom. Shalom, shalom, shalom. إيش المعروف البسيط اللي
My name is Robbie Damlin, and I'm here with my Palestinian partner, Siham Abu Awad. We've both lost immediate family members in the conflict, and we belong to the Parent Circle Families Forum. Cartoons have got a very special way, just with the stroke of a brush, of pointing something very poignant, something very funny, and something also very cruel. The culture of countries is very much in their cartoons, in the way that they draw. This is from China, and you can see the detail in the whole cartoon. And this is from Mexico, and so it's a completely different style of drawing. And this is from Cuba, and I'm actually standing next to the Palestinian cartoon. It's very funny that people use doves as a signal of peace, because in many ways the dove's the only bird that fights to the death. The funniest cartoons comes from a man called Jim Maureen from the Miami Herald, and he got the Pulitzer Prize. And he shows a Palestinian and an Israeli throwing stones at each other and them scratching their head and saying, look, I don't know if I'm initiating or retaliating. In one sentence, this man has captured the whole of what's happening, this lunacy. We believe that you can sign any peace agreement that you like on the lawns of the White House, and everybody can kiss and shake hands and eat hummus together. But until the people are involved in some form of reconciliation, until the people actually know each other, then there's no point. So all the work that we're doing is to remove the demonization.
We came from a very difficult place to bring this message of peace and reconciliation, and we proved that it's possible. We are not only two crazy people, we are here to represent more than 600 families in the Parent Circle who have to spread the same message, that we can live together and we need to share this land together. Thank you very much.
You know, I was watching everybody today, and I suddenly remembered that when you look for the humanity in the other, that's really the beginning of the end of conflict. And this has to be a lesson to all of us, because very often we don't see who's on the other side. Losing a child is the worst thing that possibly can happen to you. It is the pain that never goes away. You learn to live with it next to you. And you learn also that nothing is ever totally joyous. It's always bittersweet. But it's also what you decide to do with all of this. When I recognized that Palestinian mothers had the same pain as I did, and that there was no difference between me or Nasra, who lost her son, I suddenly realized what a powerful tool this would be to make a difference in the world, and how extraordinary it would be if we could stand on the same stage and talk together in the same voice. And after David was killed, David was a student at Tel Aviv University. He was studying for his master's in the philosophy of education. And I suddenly, I thought, I have to do something to stop other families from experiencing this pain, both Israeli and Palestinian. And this became a mission and a pilgrimage, I would say. And I started to travel all over the world. And I thought I was a really big deal. Here I am with my eloquent English, telling people about peace and reconciliation and telling them what to do. And then one day, a knock on the door. The army have come to tell me that they caught the man who killed David. Wow, what did they think? I was going to jump around with joy? That became one of the most difficult things, because this work requires you to actually look and see if you're honest. Because if you're not honest, you cannot reconcile with anybody. And so I had many, many sleepless nights, not knowing what to do with this. And I came to the conclusion that I have to walk the walk with the man who killed David. And so this is not a prerequisite for anybody. And when we talk about forgiving, we have to be terribly careful by what we mean by forgiving. Does it mean giving up your right to justice? Does it mean it's okay what the person did, they can do it again? Or you should forget? How can I forget my child? So I wrote a letter to the family of the sniper. His name is Thaya. And 2 Palestinians from our group delivered it. It's a very long story, and I won't go into the whole story, but actually it took something like 2 years when I got a letter, not exactly from Martin Luther King, to justify everything that he had done. And then I realized, wow, I'm free. Do you realize that I'm not a victim? It isn't that I still haven't got to walk the walk, but my life is not contingent on what Thaya decides to do. If he will say he's sorry, if he won't. The forgiving is for me. The forgiving is to open my own self to be vulnerable. The forgiving is not to be a victim.
Thank you for being part of this wonderful event. In my part of the world, we greet each other with Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you. And although the word peace is part of our everyday language, the reality of peace is sadly absent from the lives of too many in the Middle East. And it is particularly painful at this time of the year, the holy month of Ramadan, a month of giving when we share what we have with those who do not have enough, a month of empathy when we feel with the vulnerable, the poor, and the hungry. Yet too many of my people, mothers, fathers, children in Palestine and Iraq, are starved of the thing they need most: peace. Peace means our children can fall asleep to a mother's soft voice, not screaming sirens. Play with building blocks, not watch their homes destroyed. Make friends, not lose them. Dream up big plans for the future, not wonder if they will have one. Peace also means hope. And by raising your voices for peace, you are giving hope to millions around the world. Thank you for supporting Peace One Day. Whatever pledge you made for peace on this day, take it forward. Make it a pledge for all your days.
Eli, Eli, shelo yigamer leolam, hachor v'hayam, rishru shel hamayim, barak hashamayim, tefilat ha'adam, hachol v'hayam, rishru shel hamayim, barak hashamayim, tefilat ha'adam. O Lord my God, I pray that these things never end. The sand and the sea, the rush of the water, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of the heart, the sand and the sea, the rush of the water, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of the heart.
מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב, שבת אחים גם יחד. שבת אחים גם יחד. How good it is and how pleasant for people to live in peace. How good it is and how pleasant for people to live in peace. Hine ma tov, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov, shevet achim gam yachad. מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. How good it is and how pleasant for people to live in peace.
Okay, what do you think?
To give flowers.
To give flowers, okay.
How should we help you?
spent a long time running. I never knew then what I know now. That the fruits, they always come in, but you can't go around just knocking them down. It takes a long time to show in. We plant the seeds then and we look at them now. But the roots are always growing, no matter if I'm there or never around.
Whatever grows will grow, whatever dies will die, whatever works will work, whatever flies will fly, whatever fails will fail, what's meant to soar will soar. I am planting seeds, nothing
It's like
more.
your whole life you've been training for this moment, and when the time comes you just disown it, meaning you just surrender, don't control it. Not interested in the clay pots and mold it, or sitting next to the path trying to unfold it, or waiting for the fruits to fall down toward you. Let it go and now you're flowing, feeling quite gorgeous, so you take steps away instead of towards it. What a rush, feeling freedom with nothing to hold. We've been taught that what you touch will always turn to gold, and now we're learning when we let it go it overflows, with no credit to take, cause no credit is home. A higher power working deeper where the seeds are sowed, and when the seeds are true, then they're seeds of gold. But the real gold is joy when life starts to flow, and when it does, you just smile cause now you know. I spent a long time running, I never knew then what I know now. That the fruits, they always come in, but you can't go around just knocking them down. It takes a long time to show in. We plant the seeds then and we look at them now. But the roots are always growing, no matter if I'm there or never around.
Whatever grows will grow, whatever dies will die, whatever works will work, whatever flies will fly, whatever fails will fail, what's meant to soar will soar. I am planting seeds. Whatever grows will grow.
When it grows, it grows.
Whatever dies will
And when it dies, it dies. Come on. If it works, it works.
Whatever flies will
let it fly, let it fly.
Whatever fails will fail.
When it fails, it fails.
What's meant to soar will soar.
And when it soars, it soars.
I am planting seeds. Whatever grows will grow.
Let it grow, let it
whatever
grow.
Dies will die.
When it dies, it dies.
Whatever works will work.
When it works, it works.
Whatever flies will fly.
Let it fly, let it
whatever
fly.
Fails will fail.
When it fails, it
What's
fails.
meant to soar will soar.
Let it soar.
I am planting seeds
and nothing more. Nothing more.
You know, when you smile, it just helps someone to know that they're cared about and that you love them.